Well, we're lucky enough to be here today in beautiful Ormond Beach, Florida, with one of my favorite people on the planet. Now, he is Iroquois Mohawk, and traditionally from the Akwesasne Reservation, or St. Regis Indian Reservation. So that's where his heritage comes from. And he has an Indian name, but I have changed his Indian name to Newhart, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But the question that I've been dying to ask you, this is Alan Hooper, and the question I've been dying to ask you is, how do you feel about being Native?
Well, I'm very proud to be a Native American, and proud of the heritage that we have.
And I have it under good understanding that at an early age, you developed some heart problems.
Yeah, about 16 years ago or so, I was enjoying life as a healthy 29-year-old, I guess. And I developed a tooth infection, and I had what I thought was a common cold. I was visiting a bike week in Daytona, and when I got home, they gave me some antibiotics for the tooth infection, and I thought everything was good. And I ate healthy, didn't drink, didn't smoke, did exercise, did everything right, and I just felt like I was slowing down, getting out of shape. So I'm trying to remember the whole thing. But anyway, I couldn't get up and move one morning, and because I was a workaholic, my wife says, if you're not going to go to work, then you're going to go to the hospital. Went into the hospital, and the doctors informed me that I was in congestive heart failure, which is okay. They gave me some stuff to get rid of the fluids I had around my heart, and I felt 100% better. So they said, well, I want to go home, go back to work, and they said, well, no, we have to check you out. You have a heart that's 3 times the size it's supposed to be, which I thought was great. You know, that's awesome. You got 3 times the size heart. Everything's wonderful. And turns out that's not how it works. That was real bad, so they said they had to do a electrical stress test before they would release me and send me home, because they really felt that I could keel over and die at any time. So I kind of refused, but they had no options. They did the stress test, and I wound up waking up in the middle of the night, and I couldn't move my right arm. And I tried to turn off the TV, was doing that little fuzzy thing, shh. So I said, well, all right, I'll use my left arm. I turned the TV off, got up to use the bathroom, still no use of my arm. I tried to make a phone call to my wife at the time, and that's when I realized I couldn't speak. So I realized I had some sort of problem going on, not really sure what. I dialed the nurse. She came in, looked at me, asked me what, said okay, shut the light up, back off. And when she went into the other room, I was really scared. So hit the button again, they came in, that's when everything started. Turns out I had a major stroke and lost the entire use of the right side of my body, including my speech and my hand, my arm. I did have use of my leg. And unbeknownst to me, my face apparently had slid partially off as well. And that's when things really started taking off. They rushed me down to the operating, or wherever they went to. They rushed me down, started filling me with all kinds of fluids, I guess, to help with the stroke. And turns out that, you know, with a stroke, the heart was in worse condition than they thought. And they went ahead and put a defibrillator in and let me go home. And I think that's how that worked. Dad was there. It's probably a better.
Yeah.
Let me go home, and then from there I had to. That's probably short for him. I think it took a little bit longer than that. But
yeah, this is happening over a year or so. But anyway,
they did let me go home, and I stayed with the defibrillator, and it was a rehabilitation and therapies and stuff. And now that I'm thinking back on it, I guess I did spend way more time in there just trying to learn how to use my arm and my speech and things like that. But got back to business as usual, I thought. And then I just kept slowing down, wasn't getting really any better. So they came back, and they did they said, well, they needed to do a biventricular pacemaker because the heart wasn't working properly or something like that. So they did the biventricular pacemaker, which paces both sides of the heart. That was the second surgery. Then it's inserted it up here in the upper muscle, or below the muscle. And then I had that for about a year, and at that point I was pretty dissatisfied with, doctors and things like that, and kind of went off rogue for, I guess, a minute, and was not going to my doctor's appointments, was not doing anything, and I was getting sicker by the day, and I wound up losing like 115 pounds, I think. I was down to like 97 pounds, which I have a picture of somewhere, but it's something you don't want to look at. Got into the hospital. I had a mandatory appointment to go. I had to go into the doctor's office, and when I did go into the doctor's office, they said, they took me down, and at this point I was couldn't eat anything, sensitive to smells, sensitive to noises, sensitive to everything, and I could barely walk, but I could still walk. And they took me in, and they kind of gave me two options. They said that, I was in such a state with my kidneys and liver had shut down, or were shutting down, that they could do one of two things. Like, they could give me a mechanical device called a LVAD that basically replaces the left side of my heart, or I could go home and think about it, which is, I guess, a death sentence now looking back at it. And then I guess after that I got the heart pump, which is, I guess, the saddest part of the story. And then I got much better again, time lapse here. They put the mechanical heart in, and I was, after that, determined that, that wasn't the end of the story. So I guess I just worked as hard as I could to make it so I could be alive again, which is probably one of the, I guess, the best decisions I could have made at the time, looking back. And sorry for all the ums. That's a lot to bring back. Most of it's been tucked away. Looking at like 13 years ago, so I'm much better now. But anyway, I pushed and pushed, and I had a goal I wanted to meet, which was to get out of the hospital by Halloween, because I want to take my kids trick-or-treating. So I made it happen. I pushed. They had a list of things that I had to do, which seemed unrealistic. But they made me. I had no choice. And for that I thank them. But I did all the things. I walked around the hospital floors. I climbed stairs. I had to learn how, with the mechanical heart, I had to actually learn how to disconnect myself, and learn how to if the batteries quit. The mechanical heart was kind of a weird beast. It plugged in the wall and had a PBU, or a personal base unit, that plugged into the wall, and then it had a cord that ran into my stomach. And the cord that ran into my stomach was my life supply. It was the power that ran the heart that kept me alive, because my heart had basically, at least part of it, given up. So they took and gave me options with the PBU, and the option was I could go short spells on a battery pack. They give me 2 batteries, and you have a little harness, and it looks like a shotgun, little pistols in your side, and you have 2 batteries, and the batteries kept you alive when you weren't plugged into the wall. Or I had a hand pump that you could also use to keep you alive if the batteries failed. So there was 3 systems to it. So I took optimal advantage of the battery system, and every time that I get a chance, I'd get some new batteries for spares, and I tuck them away in my personal stash. And I eventually accumulated enough batteries that I could go an entire day off of the base unit. Instead of being attached to the wall, I just wore a backpack, and I could go and do anything and everything except for swimming and showering that I wanted to. And I could have showered, but everybody that I knew that had showered wound up with a major infection, so I chose not to shower. We did towel baths or sponge baths instead. But everything else, from riding my bicycles to, doing field trips with the kids to the beach and all kinds of things, I was able to do, and trick or treat, which was pretty important to them at the time, or me at least. I was able to do, and then they got that went on for about a year where I totally rehabilitated myself. In the meantime, before I had gotten the stroke, jumping back a little bit, before I had gotten the pump, jumping back a little bit, I had several TIA and mini strokes. There were little setbacks, but by the time I got the mechanical heart, and I just kept pushing, once they let me to the hospital, I just basically didn't slow down, because they said that, today could be the day, or any day could be the day, as it is with anybody, but it just was a little bit more realistic at that point. So I got the mechanical heart, and like I said, I didn't look back. I just kept pushing forward, and I had a setback. I was on the transplant list the entire time. This lasted, the mechanical heart I had for almost exactly a year.
Now let's take a short break here.